A lot of people build the tier list. I already built the tier list. I'm going to explain it. And I think another problem with tier list is that they typically start with the F tier, but you have to talk about the top because the top generally forces the meta in a specific direction. So right into it, Phoenix is so overtuned. A stun, tons of mobility, tons of damage, AoE damage. This hero counters so many ults too. Rocket ult is countered, Rocket ult is countered, Hella ult is countered. I think those are the ones that are maybe most directly countered and also the most important ones that she counters. On top of that, she keeps Loki in check because of her AoE. It means that each one of the clones basically negatively affects the team. If you nerf Phoenix, other heroes will come back up into the meta. But I want to be very clear on one thing. The meta is the way it is because of Phoenix and these other three heroes. So on to Sue. Sue's shield is extremely oppressive. It needs to deplete health as it gives health to allies. One of the big reasons why Sue is so strong is because of the utility that she has. She has a push, which is actually the worst part of her kit. She has a pull, which is definitely the best part of her kit, outside of the shield. And then just an insane amount of healing. But the shield is also extremely problematic because it prevents a lot of heroes who have projectiles from being able to pierce. It makes a Venom dive essentially pointless until the shield is gone. And Venom really doesn't have, I'm just picking on Venom right now, but a lot of dive heroes don't really have the ability to be in long enough to deal 250 damage, get out, or not even get out, but sustain, and then focus on a 275 hero and capitalize on that. So the shield is effectively just another hero that a dive hero has to get through while being punished by Sue, who deals quite a bit of damage as well, and has a pull if you don't escape early enough. Sue locks down dive. And then also, let's just pick on Hulk real quick. When I'm in Monster Hulk and I use my clap, if Sue puts a shield in front of her, which is very easy now because of the changes that they made, or if I'm Thor and I ultimate and she puts a shield in front of her, she completely negates my ultimate. Gambit is a must play, not just because of the amount of utility he has, which is ridiculous, not just because of the damage and healing he has, which is also ridiculous, but because his ultimate generates ultimate. Up to 25% ultimate charge is generated through his ult. And because currently Marvel Rivals has a lot of ultimates in the game that are click a button and win, for instance, Star-Lord, Psylocke, Hela, Punisher, etc., that means that Gambit is one of the most important characters in the meta right now, just because you're able to gain that ultimate charge. He also makes ultimates which are generally weak. For instance, Iron Fist, Thor, much stronger. Thor can one-shot through, through defensive ultimates if someone else contributes just a little bit of damage to that defensive ultimate. And Iron Fist just starts flying around the screen. I played against two last night for some reason. Absolute menace. But otherwise, that ultimate stinks. Then you have Magneto. Magneto needs to be played because he enables the entire team. He is the best team player hero. And the reason why is because of the bubbles, is because of the shield, and because he's able to sustain a ton of damage by himself. A left click into the mag cannon, which displaces back into the left click almost immediately, deals 240 damage, can one-shot a squishy, I think, if the numbers actually come out. I think the numbers come out better than 100 or 240 damage. But way too consistent. He's also got probably the best ultimate in the game because it reverses the situation. You go from an offensive ultimate, which generally is not able to kill through defensive ultimates, to if I'm able to kill through this defensive ultimate, then now I've only used a offensive ultimate, a tank ultimate, without having used a defensive ultimate, and we win the game kind of situation. But the bubbles are also extremely powerful in the same vein as why Su's shield is problematic. It's 200 HP. He gets 2 of them now every, I think it's 8 seconds, not even 10 seconds. If I am Hulk in my monster form and a strategist gets bubbled, then I can no longer juggle that hero. This this purple bubble that is able to negate ultimates is a problem. And then, of course, also probably the best shield in the game, Strange's does not. It obviously has more health, but doesn't do the same thing in terms of uptime, just because Magneto is able to use his shield so often, and the cooldown is just on time. So damage is not really a problem. All these 4 heroes need to have their damage or healing reduced. I like the utility in the game; it needs to stay there. But even some of those, the cooldowns need to be increased. I think Phoenix's stun mechanic should only apply if a hero has sparks on them already. For instance, I think I already mentioned I think Su's shield should be depleted when it gives health to allies. Magneto's 2 bubbles need to have their cooldowns increased. There used to be this more interesting gameplay loop where Magneto had to make a decision on whether to save himself of the bubble or to hold it and save an ally. But now he's able to use it just so often. And Gambit, I love the skill mechanics to Gambit, but the numbers are just all way too high. They need to be reduced. I love that his ultimate gives movement, that gives damage increase. You know, it makes Thor ultimate good, for instance. But this hero doesn't have to have such a strong neutral then. There's no reason to play really any hero below these 4 if your team is missing them or they aren't banned. And that's a problem. That is definitely a problem. On to Groot. Groot, and the first member of the S tier. Groot is just so strong. He might have the best ultimate in the game because there's very little counter to it, and it consistently team wipes too. There's so many things that you can do with the ultimate, as well as like throw the Groot, I don't know what it's called, the seed we'll call it, but the ult outside of an ult in order to pull a strategist out of their ult, or even throwing it at a wall so the strategist is pulled up onto the wall, and then you can kill through that way. The walls are oppressive. The walls actually keep Hawkeye in check, who's also in this tier, and force like a Punisher, for instance, just to get through them very quickly. He's one of the best counters to Penny. I mean, that's good because his walls are able to break the nest so quickly. And for whatever reason, they decided to give him a change to his Iron Wall, which I think was a good change. But the radius is large enough where Groot basically just never can be displaced now. And while I've always appreciated that Groot has insane damage potential, he can often be the highest damage in the lobby at the cost of movement. I think he's just so out of line with the rest of the Vanguards as the number 1 damage option that him being able to also challenge DPS in terms of damage no longer makes sense. A good Groot runs the lobby, probably should actually be in the must play. And the only reason why he isn't is because you have like a hero like Punisher, for instance, that can keep Groot in check. But if you have a Magneto, then you have the counter to the counter. There's levels to this. Groot needs to be tuned down. Luna, who hasn't complained about Luna? She, as well as like a Punisher or a Hela, makes the game just stop for about 10 seconds. I really believe that she needs to receive some damage in her own while she's in her ultimate. And what I mean by that actually is I think the self-healing that she receives from her ultimate needs to be reduced. There should be a penalty for being able to push aggressively with Luna Ultimate where you need to juggle positioning better. I also, in my own lobbies, which is like Diamond 1, GM3, just feel that there's not enough coordination at that elo for us to ever kill through Luna Ultimate. So really, it just reinforces that Luna ultimate happens and then nothing happens for a good 10 seconds, and it's not fun. Ultron got giga buffed. His right click, or I think for me it's right click, but for other people it's the imperative patch. It increases movement and it also increases damage. He has 2 drones. One of the big problems with Ultron is that some of the lower damage heroes in the F tier, for instance, and even in the D tier, some probably are in the C tier too, they struggle to kill through just consistent healing, and that's what Ultron provides. Another huge problem with Ultron is that you need a DPS to swap, or you have to play Angela in order to challenge Ultron, because that consistent healing, it adds up very quickly. And then one thing too that I want to just talk on is Ultron ult hard counters Jeff ult. Hard counters a lot of high armor ultimates as well, excluding Punisher. But Ultron in a vacuum is kind of healthy for the game, just because he has his ability to do extra damage to armor in his ultimate. The problem is that flyers will always have a problem where they just force the DPS who have access to hit scan, have access to a hero like Spider-Man 2, who's really probably the best equipped melee hero to deal with flyers. Well, you just need the team in order to counter swap. And as a Vanguard player, that can be very frustrating, because sometimes I just see an Ultron and I know the game's lost because we have, for instance, a Mr. Fantastic who won't swap. Hawkeye's problem is his ultimate is way too... I don't know why he gets after images. They're very frustrating. You just have to hide for 10 seconds. That's not fun. The one-shot mechanic is not fun. It's definitely not fun for a Cloak and Dagger who almost consistently is going to drive into a Hawkeye and get one-shotted. It's not really hard to line up a headshot because of how linear a game mode like the cart, Convergence, or the other one plays out. You can basically just shoot into a group of people and net a kill that way. What I wish they would do is remove the ability to easily get one-shot mechanics. This also goes for Widow as well, which are more and more prevalent because of the Ultron change, because we also have heroes like Storm who give damage modifiers, and there's another one too. It's Mantis. But what I wish they would do with Hawkeye is just introduce a bleed mechanic that would slowly get you to that one-shot potential. So if you didn't receive any healing in that time, you'd be punished in the same way. But to outright be able to one-shot a hero, there's just so many times where the game feels lost because the enemy team has a Hawkeye and my strategists are just too dumb or poorly positioned to be able to make changes and maneuver having that Hawkeye. I mean, I personally always swap to Venom, but there are so many counter swaps to me swapping to Venom that is not always effective. And the same thing's true also for Captain America, who are like two of the best heroes against Hawkeye. You want to dive a Hawkeye. You don't really want to play a shield hero into a Hawkeye. The character just does too much damage. That's the problem. I hate Bucky. Bucky has been in S tier his entire life. I mean, same thing with Hela too, and Luna for that matter. Probably Groot. But Bucky has been in S tier his entire life. His ultimate is so steamrolly. He counters Loki. He's one thing that's keeping Loki in check as well. The ability to ground with his punch is not very fun. Another counter to, like, say, a Hulk or an Angela. I also want to mention too that Sue really grounds Angela as well. A lot of tier lists have Angela much higher than I do. But with the meta today, Bucky and also Sue, I just don't see it where Angela can be higher than where I've placed her. With Bucky, though, we have an issue of just a lot of damage, a lot of utility. The hook is one of the most forgiving abilities in the game. The projectile size that Bucky shoots is enormous and deals splash damage. I don't know why. Bucky is supposed to be this anti-dive hero, but what he really is used today is a anti-vanguard or frontline hero. And the amount of displacement that he can create against a Magneto or a Strange, a Thor, a Hulk, etc., is just really punishing for an enemy team. What's interesting is actually that Groot, who used to be one of the weakest into Bucky, is now one of the strongest because of the change to the Iron Wall. I'm not really sure that makes sense, but I also don't think that Bucky being as strong of a displacement hero as he is makes sense either because of the immense amount of damage he has. One last thing I want to mention is DPS heroes like Phoenix, Bucky, and Hela, who I'm about to talk about next, are able to, because they have so much damage, they're able to keep triple support healthy. You are sacrificing damage for more healing in triple support. You need high damage. These three heroes get nerfed. I promise you triple support will also become less viable. Onto Hela. Hela ult is just 12 seconds in hide. Melee compositions cannot play into Hela ult because she just rolls. The melee heroes have no agency against that. It feels like a throw pick to not play anyone but Doctor Strange when a Hela is on the field, which isn't great. Unless I'm consistently able to dive the Hela. Her escape tools, in terms of stun and flight, are annoying to play against. The amount of damage that she has is also annoying to play against. But I actually think for one of the heroes in S tier, and she definitely deserves to be here, mostly because I think her ult is so oppressive against melee comps. She also feels like the most underwhelming in this row. I don't want to act as though she belongs in A tier. This hero has been so powerful for so long. She needs to have like less ammo. Her ult needs to work where she only gets health in her ults. Right now it like defaults to 1,000 or 800. Well, the way I think it should work is it should take her current HP and multiply it by 4, and that's the amount of health that she has in her ultimate. But I will say that Hela does feel like one of the more fair heroes in S tier. It's a hero where if I'm playing Hulk or Thor, I feel that I have the ability to challenge her. Whereas a Bucky, I don't feel that way. A Hawkeye, I don't feel that way. An Ultron, I don't really have tools to necessarily challenge an Ultron reliably without putting myself at a huge disadvantage. Luna hits a freeze and the whole team looks at me, I'm dead. Groot puts up like 2 walls, and if my team doesn't have the damage, then I can't get back to my team. But Hela, meanwhile, at least I know the gameplay loop is kind of jump in, bait out the bird, jump out, re-engage. Now she has a stun. If I can play through the stun, then I jump out. There feels like a loop that I can play around with Hela. I will give her that credit. That said, she still deals so much damage, and her ultimate is very oppressive to melee compositions. Then you have Penny Parker. I mean, the problem with Penny Parker is the same as Ultron. If your DPS don't swap, and they're the ones who are supposed to counter Penny, but if your DPS don't swap to deal with the nest through flyers, Squirrel Girl, even Phoenix ult can kind of open up the game for you, then you are locked out. Magneto can do some, but also if it's like Yarghasil Path in that first point and you're trying to turn around a corner, Magneto cannot help getting around that corner. And the rocket team up just compounds the problem. Penny also has the stun, which is very annoying. I think the main change they have to do with Penny isn't actually to reduce the HP on the nest, but each time a spider drone deals damage within the nest, then that nest HP decreases. If you decrease the amount of HP the nest has, you haven't really tackled the root problem, which is sometimes, as a Vanguard, you just literally cannot see the nest. So if you make it 1 HP or if you make it 1,000 HP, it doesn't matter. I'm just not even hitting it. And that's the main problem. Onto Emma. Emma is just so strong. Don't let anyone fool you into believing that she's weak. Her ultimate shuts down Star-Lord ultimate. Thank God. She's a Vanguard bully, which is terrible for Vanguards because Vanguards are always on the front line. They're very, and if she wants, she can turn around and help in the back line. The A tier is just a tier of heroes that in any other game they would be S tier. They would be broken, and that's true here too. All these heroes need to have nerfs in the next patch. Otherwise, the game will remain unfun. I don't really have a whole lot more to say about Emma. I do personally think, as a Hulk and Thor main, it's one of the weaker matchups, but it's a matchup that I feel has become more and more manageable because of my own skill and understanding of how the matchup plays. That said, she still does so much damage, and the truth is that I can't fault anyone for basically saying, can we get a Emma anytime half the roster is being played? Who's a better counter to a diving Black Panther, Hulk or Emma? Well, technically, I would say both are pretty good. A Hulk can bubble a team, and then Panther doesn't have his dashes. He can also exile the Panther. But an Emma can grab a Panther and then one-shot him. That's kind of the problem, is that Emma just replaces a lot of or it doesn't even replace, but just nullifies a lot of the roster in ways that other heroes cannot. Loki, I think other streamers have already said that Loki is just the strongest he's ever been, and I'm going to take their word for it. He's strong. I mean, there's nothing to really say. I think the runes need to have more skill involved. A rune should stay up until it's completely depleted, so that the ability requires some skill and good positioning. Too often I see just kind of a panic Loki rune, and those don't get punished. Rocket is a great hero for anyone who has no idea what they're doing on healer. Consistent value, heals himself so much. Good thing Phoenix is in the game. But I think the main problem of Rocket is just the amount of self-healing he gives himself. It makes... I don't really know who the best dive is into a Rocket. It feels like Venom, because Venom can accidentally headshot him. And I have the same thoughts about Jeff. But Rocket gives so much consistent healing to himself and to his team. And he allows bad players, bad strategists, to fill a role well. That's problematic. Jeff ult means that I cannot play Hulk without a Magneto bubbling me. So much self-sustain. I already said that one of the reasons why Jeff is not as strong as he is today is because of Ultron and also Phoenix. That is still true right now. Insane amount of damage, same amount of healing. The fact that his splash goes through allies and enemies, it should stop at the first enemy, in my opinion, just means that he's able to backline from so far away. I mean, both Jeff and Rocket are able to basically heal from spawn, and that's just not an engaging gameplay loop. I prefer Jeff to be like a really high skill mobility strategist, a support to dive. But right now it just feels like he can do that, and then on top of that he can heal bot, which is not great. Punisher, I don't understand why Punisher gets CC immunity. The shotgun deals 500 damage, This hero feels like a hero that is just meant to hold down mouse 1 until he builds ultimate. And then, one of the problems with the Punisher ultimate is the lack of mobility. Well, that's not true anymore. We have Jeff in the meta who increases mobility. You have Ultron, Gambit, who also have mobility increase mechanics. You have Storm too. I'm tired of people telling me that Punisher is not one of the best DPS in the game, because he clearly is, in my opinion. There's so much tech too with Punisher and ability to increase movement with the smoke grenade, the zip lines, and then he even has another form of CC immunity which helps him against ultimates in the turret. And so he just needs his damage decreased. That I think it's that simple. He needs his damage decreased. He needs his ultimate to be the cost to be increased as well. I'm sick of hearing that ult go off basically every 30 seconds. Star-Lord has no counter except for Loki. Same thing also with Psylocke. Both of these are pretty hard countered by Loki, so they're kind of keeping each other in check. But there is no ultimate really, other than defensive ultimate, that counters Star-Lord ult well. And that, to me, is a big problem. I do think that Star-Lord takes a ton of skill to play in the neutral, but then he has the least engaging ultimate ever, where it just auto-locks onto everyone. And I wish they could tune that differently so that the ultimate felt like the skill stayed through the neutral into, click to win. Click Q to win. Psylocke, same problem. I have a very simple fix for Psylocke. The damage numbers are not very high, but one thing that is very high is her cooldown. She gets her cooldown so quickly. And part of the problem is because the spread of her shotgun is so tight that she is able, for a hero that's supposed to feel like an assassin, she is able to shoot from so far in the back line. And the fix is very simple. Just increase the spread that she has so that when she tries to reduce cooldowns from her own backline, she's unable to. Make her have to engage in closer combat. Then I think you'll see Psylocke finally have some more balance in the neutral. The other problem is her ultimate. She didn't need the ult buff. It was somewhat interesting that two strategists could patty cake through her ultimate, but because they increased the amount of damage, the amount of speed too during her ultimate, Psylocke is able to kill through that. Then you have B tier, which is Mantis, Atom, Moon Knight, Daredevil. On Mantis and Atom, I think both these heroes just need to have their ult cost increased. Mantis, to me, is one of the hardest strategists to get value out of. I know that she makes triple support viable, but I simply cannot deal with the slowness of her projectile, her general lack of mobility. And then Atom kind of has the same problem, except that he's hit scan. I mean, personally for me, I don't want to play Marvel Rivals in order to aim well. So these two heroes just feel balanced in that sense because they're not about maybe their damage is too high, but there is some skill involved in terms of aiming, and I appreciate that. That said, the ultimate frequency is too high. Moon Knight, on the other hand, is like the exact opposite, but his ultimate frequency is also way too high. The Ankhs should not displace heroes. I wish what they would do is focus more on his mobility tool, which feels kind of janky. Not even janky, but just kind of comical. Instead, what he does is just holds down mouse 1, throws an Ankh near people. He is really good into Loki. But this just feels like another Punisher hero where you're just waiting to build ult, you hit Q, and then maybe you win. More of a gamble than Punisher. And Punisher is like basically always able to consistently team wipe if there's no defensive ult. Then Daredevil. I have Daredevil much lower than a lot of other people. Personally, in D1, GM3, what I notice is that Daredevil might be able to challenge Hela and Phoenix, but I would still rather just have a Hela and Phoenix who are able to challenge the other Hela and Phoenix. I don't think Daredevil ult is very strong. Maybe I'm wrong. And I also just think with the two heroes that I play, which is Thor and Hulk, that I'm able to manage Daredevil pretty well. He's never really a problem for me personally. I know strategists probably feel differently about Daredevil, but I think a hero like Sue, a hero like Gambit, they're able to lock out Daredevil as well. So I just don't buy that Daredevil is as strong as people say he is. If he is, and I think the other thing too is B is probably where we start to see balance or maybe just overtuned balance, and C is like true balance of heroes. But if Daredevil is too strong, then I think the main thing they need to do is reduce his sustain. The block ability is kind of frustrating as a Thor player, and it doesn't make sense to me why he has a longer and shorter cooldown block than Iron Fist. On to the C tier. Strange will always be meta because of the TP. Thor bullies Strange. I mean, Thor bullies like basically the entire Vanguard class, but there are other problems and reasons why Thor is not in the meta or as meta as he could be. Doctor Strange ultimate is one of the few ultimates that can actually break through triple support, but triple support also has so many tools to neutralize Strange ult. You have Sue shield, you have Sue push, you have Gambit cleanse, you have Luna freeze, which is even faster now and easier to hit, you have Mantis sleep, you have Soul Bond, which is maybe not as strong, probably one of the weakest against that, but there's just way too many tools where Doctor Strange, in most cases, is not good enough, but at the same time, he's like one of the few Vanguards who is able to actually be viable in triple support. And he is like the swap that I would make into triple support. Captain America, the ult change where he increases ultimate is so good for the entire team. Another movement speed hero too, or like grants it to the rest of the team. The damage is low, but guess what? Captain America is viable in Pro League, so he must be good. I just think that this hero at this point is balanced. He doesn't need any changes. I know there's like a Captain America community that believes that he does, but he's in a good spot. And that's that. I think the same thing with Thor. Thor, like selfishly, I wish he would have another mechanic where he hammer throws and then can teleport to that hammer throw if he clicks it early without getting Thor Force. But he is able to absolutely bully Magneto, Strange, all the shield tanks, Rogue as well. All these heroes have a bad time. And I also think with the amount of Thor Force that you can generate, he's not terrible into Emma. Probably his weakest matchup is into Wolverine, and then just a ton of damage, like Punisher, for instance. But Thor feels really good. And I think that, for a hero who can deal 80 damage, which is the same amount of damage that Magneto can do with his left click, but Thor's 80 damage is locked behind Thor Force and like using Awakening, which removes half of his ability set. Thor is just a really well-designed hero, and I wish like all heroes should come down to C tier. It is probably one of the biggest problems with this tier list too, or just the state of rivals. On to Rogue. Rogue actually feels overtuned. I think her damage is way too high. You can like mindlessly jump in, play Rogue, and do well by just kind of realizing that every single button that she has, every single ability she has is a dash. And so the problem of, well, I have this melee character, how do I close the gap? She has 4 tools to do that. Yes, they do individual abilities, and yes, also they're very strong. Yes, the cooldowns are very high, but also she is one of the smallest hitboxes as a Vanguard. Just feels overtuned in terms of the damage numbers, but at the same time, there's just better characters where she's not a B tier hero. Her ultimate, which steals ult like in a vacuum or on paper, sounds really strong, but because it doesn't decrease past 80, it's not as strong as it could be. If this hero had unlimited ultimate drain, no cap at the bottom, she would be a lot better. but she's just not there for me. Or what I really should say is she feels balanced. Venom probably needs some help. I think what should happen is he should have the ability to use his symbiotic whatever, the blue thing that gains over health whenever he wants, as long as the cooldown is up. He is just a victim of the CC rivals, basically. Angela, kind of the same case. The damage is very low. I love these kind of heroes. I already kind of touched on how Bucky and Invis just neutralize her. There are so many things too that can bump her around. Other, Angela, another problem with Angela too is there are just some maps where she's very strong, and there's some maps where the only thing she can do is like push heroes into your front line, but you are the front line. So there's definitely the need to have triple Vanguard, in my opinion, in order to be always effective. Hence always effective. Stress on always effective. But for me, in my ranked games, she is not there, where she is, in a B or A tier, like other streamers have her. Cloak dies to Punisher, Shotgun, to Hawkeye. She can be displaced by Thor. She can be just countered by like way too much of the roster. Magneto too. I think Bubble needs to have a much shorter cooldown, because right now you bubble, the bubble lasts for 6 seconds. The cooldown is 12 seconds. So half the time is spent just being healed. Then you have access to other abilities like Shroud or whatever it's called. And so the amount of self-sustain that she has just through her own moveset is too high. That said, I still think she's one of the weaker strategists and kind of a throw pick, really, compared to the rest of the roster. Human Torch could be very frustrating if the duelists do not swap in order to counter. But one of the benefits to Torch right now is that his ultimate is just one of the weaker duelist ultimates. I still think because he's a flyer, he is very strong. I like that he has this silent assassin flyer niche. But I just don't see Torch, frankly, in my games. I mean, not really that much. I think I've probably seen him 3 times this season, and I've played maybe like 60 games. Wolverine is extremely strong. Don't let me fool you. This hero's ultimate is one of the most frustrating ultimates in the game, because in a linear game like Cart, where you're trying to push, back to front, he can team wipe so easily. And what are you supposed to do? Just not try to push the cart? That said, if the enemy team just swaps on to Sue to pull, or Bucky, any high damage duelist too, Wolverine becomes absolutely useless. A bubble can also make Wolverine's kit meaningless too. So I think Wolverine, as much as I hate him, is in a good spot right now. I put Storm at C tier mostly because, unlike Human Torch, where he can fly up, Storm wants to be low. She provides so much utility to the team, but at this point, so do so many of the heroes above her, that I don't think a duelist who provides that kind of utility is actually that helpful. Her ultimate gets hard countered by Phoenix ult. I've been kind of dancing around that one, but yeah, that is a problem. Her ultimate also gets countered by who is it? Punisher, Star-Lord, and Psylocke ult. The Jeff Nato thing is great into triple strategist, but I don't think Storm by herself is super strong. I think she's just balanced at this point. Kind of the same thought about Namor. Namor in a vacuum should be one of the best heroes in the game. He's like one of the clear counters to Jeff ult, to Sue ult, just because the radius is like matching both of them. But what I find is my duelists do not want to play Namor. I think he's balanced just because, and like maybe a change that you could have is the turrets, when they deal damage, they deplete health. But I just notice as a Vanguard player that my duelists do not want to play this hero. So I think he is at a good place where he's not super strong. He's where he should be. He's where he should be. The Thing, one of the worst performing heroes. He just feeds damage to Duelist. He, like Squirrel Girl, for instance, is great into Thing. And Squirrel Girl is like really only good to Thing and Groot, who are slow mobility or low mobility heroes. This is just one of the dumbest characters that's ever been created in a game. You just hold down to right click to deal tons of damage. The amount of utility that he has, at some point, Thing will be busted because they've given so much utility to this hero on top of the damage and the gameplay loop that you have. Not to be like critical of Rogue and Thing, but it just feels so mindless. The ultimate also generates so quickly and is good. But at the same time, I have to acknowledge that most of the time you're just feeding ult charge to... you're not even feeding ult charge because you gain over health. You're just taking tons of damage. That is most of what Thing does. You're just taking tons of damage. Black Widow should be having her best season this season because of the flyer meta that kind of exists. But she's not. I still think that this hero can become extremely frustrating. I think right now is perfect. She has tons of bugs, but I would not touch her more than she is right now. Spider-Man needs to be modified so that he deals extra damage to heroes that are above the ground, so that he can become a anti-flyer melee character. I see a lot of Spider-Man actually, but I'm never really worried about Spider-Man. I know he's frustrating to play against. He does feel a lot like Panther, except in the air, which is definitely worse. But I think he's in a fine spot. Magic ult is very strong. Her neutral definitely does not feel very strong. I personally think when I see Magic on my team that this is not going to go well, just because it's so easy for a Duelist to counter swap to a flyer, and then Magic becomes pretty useless. But generally, I find that Magic players... I think Magic as a hero is in a good spot. She should have some vertical ability where she's able to challenge flyers. It doesn't need to be super exaggerated. I think literally just the spinning disc needs to have some Y movement too. And one thing that will keep Magic always kind of relevant is the fact that she has the ability to one-shot in her ultimate by comboing like 2 movesets. Squirrel Girl, extremely frustrating character. If she was any better, she would be, A tier just in terms of frustration. Her ultimate generates way too quickly. Deals a lot of damage. It feels random. Not a great hero. Keep her where she is. Iron Man, like a flyer, so he's strong. Ultimate can one-shot, but gets displaced by everything. Bubble, Magneto, Sue Shield, etc. All counter him. Huge hitbox. The AoE effect is also annoying, but he feels balanced. He does feel balanced despite, again, like having so many things going for him. Blade, just like a lot of annoying utility things that he has, but I think the biggest problem with Blade is that, like for instance, he displaces with his clicks. I think one of the biggest problems with Blade is that his ultimate does not do enough anti-heal. For like 3 cycles now of triple strategist, and probably more than that, he has been irrelevant. The anti-heal during his ultimate needs to be increased. Hulk is the most skill-intensive hero in the game, but his contribution to the team is basically to generate ultimate for a friendly strategist. He's like great into triple strategist and with triple strategist because the damage is pretty low on both sides, and then the healing and the rate at which you generate ultimate also increases. But he's just in CC hell. His ultimate is ineffective against a Magneto bubble, a Magneto shield, and he's supposed to have a great matchup into shield tanks because he's melee and can cleave. He needs a lot of help. Black Panther is so easily countered by a Phoenix right click, for instance, a stun. I hardly ever see this hero when he is in the meta or when he is played. He runs lobbies until one person makes a swap and then he does nothing. But the reality is that the compositions don't even necessarily need to make a swap. They have almost every single duelist has a tool to deal with Black Panther. It's just really a skill issue. And then the strategist, I mean, they just patty cake each other and Black Panther will run out of steam pretty quickly. Iron Fist doesn't make sense. He is supposed to somehow be able to sustain all the damage on the front line in order to just hit the tanks, but that cannot happen. The ultimate, like Hulk ult, is pretty skill intense. And the like with Hulk, I can speak to Hulk, I can speak less to Iron Fist, but with Hulk, I have a good Hulk ult if I get 2 kills. With Iron Fist, he's subject to the same 12 seconds. You know, they're both kind of like these empowered states. But Iron Fist doesn't get like any cool mechanic that Hulk gets. Iron Fist just basically does more, does more damage. Iron Fist, I think, needs some help. Mr. Fantastic has one of the worst ultimates in the game. He's really frustrating to play against because of the displacement and the bumping around. But just because the hero is frustrating to play against does not mean that he is good. I think they need to introduce like a push back mechanic when he gets in inflated state and increase the speed, so he at least has like an environmental kill potential and some cool like fun gameplay mechanic. Because right now all he is frustrating. He's also frustrating to have on a team because you just know that hero needs to counter swap or not counter swapped. It is bad into like a Punisher, into a Hawkeye, the current meta. And then, well, I want to speak about Hulk real quick. Hulk should also like be really good this season because he is anti-shield and shields are clearly very strong this season. You know, the exile mechanic is one of the coolest mechanics in any game. The air tackling, I love. The wall grabbing is like cool, but not really used. And then the juggle, the ultimate, like Hulk ult is what all ultimates should be, where you get empowered, and then you know maybe you're able to get 1 or 2 kills out of it. But there also just feels like this amount of skill involved with the ultimate, and there's so many just click to win ultimates that don't do that. On to Wanda. You increase the damage and she becomes frustrating. She's already frustrating sometimes because she has so much escapability. Her ultimate just feels like, I don't know what they do with the ult. I think they need to scrap it completely. I want to just recommend that like she blinds everyone, but I don't think that kind of ultimate is interactive.